Buddha taught that we suffer because we grasp. We reach for what we want. We hold tight to who we think we should be. And slowly, the heart grows tired. But he pointed to another way. It is the art of letting go. When we learn to let go, what we were chasing is often already there, and a great peace begins to fill our life. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. Over the next few hours, we will explore the art of letting go together. We will look at why the mind grows so crowded, how peace draws near the moment we stop chasing it, and how, gently, to set things down. Nothing here needs to be solved. There is nothing to achieve. There is only the slow relief of release, of letting the breath go and finding it returns on its own, of loosening the grip and finding that you do not fall. So let the body grow still. Let the breath find its own slow rhythm. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk. Let us begin. Long ago, a man sat beneath a tree and asked himself why a human life, even at its most fortunate, so often carries an ache. What he saw there became the heart of everything the Buddha taught. The ache, he found, does not come mostly from the world outside us. It comes from how we hold the world. We grasp at what we want and clutch it close. We shove away what we do not want. We grip even our worries, as though holding them might keep us safe. And this grasping, repeated 1,000 times a day, is what slowly wears the heart down. He gave the grasping a name. He called it craving, the thirst that is never satisfied for long. And he taught something that can sound almost too plain to believe. That the end of our suffering is not the end of the world's troubles, but the loosening of our grip upon them. Freedom is found not by gathering more, but by learning to set things down. It sounds simple, and yet anyone who has tried to sit still, even for a few minutes, knows how hard it can be. You close your eyes to rest, and at once the mind begins to stir. There is the task you forgot, the thing you wish you had said, the long list waiting for tomorrow. You came to be still, and instead you find a crowd. The reason is this: the heart was already full before you ever sat down. There is an old tale, told in many lands, about a young woman who wove cloth in a poor quarter of an ancient town. She was not wealthy. She owned little more than her loom, a few clay bowls, a sleeping mat, and the small room where she worked. Her meals were plain: a little bread, some fruit from the market, a cup of tea as the sun went down. She wanted little, and so she lacked little. And from morning until night, as her hands moved across the threads, she sang. Her voice drifted out through the open window and down the narrow street, and the neighbors smiled to hear it. Children would pause their games to listen. She sang not because her life was easy, but because her heart was light, and a light heart sings as a bird does, without ever deciding to. In the great house beside her lived a wealthy man. He had storehouses of grain and chests of silver, servants at every door, and far more than he could use in a lifetime. By every measure the town could name, he had done well. Yet he could not sleep. He lay awake through the long nights, turning his accounts over and over in his mind, counting what he owned, and then counting what he might lose. He worried about thieves. He worried about rivals. He worried that some turn of fortune would sweep it all away. His days were spent guarding what he had and his nights were spent fearing for it. And just as the dawn came and his eyes grew heavy at last, the weaver next door would begin to sing, and sleep would flee from him once more. One morning, weary and out of patience, he sent for her. She came and stood in his great hall, a little afraid to be summoned by such an important man. "Tell me," he said, "how much do you earn in a year, with all your weaving?" She laughed. "A year?" "I could not say, sir. I have never counted so far ahead. I earn enough for today. And when today is over, I trust that tomorrow will bring enough for tomorrow." The wealthy man was troubled by this. It seemed to him a frightening way to live, with no store of wealth, no cushion against misfortune. And perhaps, somewhere beneath that, he simply could not bear that she should sing while he lay awake. So he took a heavy purse of silver from his chest and pressed it into her hands. "Take this," he said. "It is enough to keep you for years. Now you need never worry again." The weaver had never held so much in all her life. She thanked him, hardly believing it, and carried the purse home cradled against her chest. That first evening, she did not sing. She sat beside her loom with the purse in her lap, running her thumb over the cool coins, counting them once and then again, just to be sure of the number. It was a fine feeling at first, this weight of safety in her hands. She did not yet know that it was the beginning of all her trouble. And from that hour, everything changed. She hid the silver beneath a loose stone in the floor. But then she began to wonder whether the stone was safe. She moved the purse up into the rafters, then feared it might be seen there, and moved it once again. At every sound from the street, she rose from her loom to make sure it had not been found. She found, too, that she no longer trusted her neighbors, the very people whose smiles had once warmed her mornings. When they greeted her now, she searched their faces, wondering what they knew and what they wanted. At night she lay awake, listening, certain that each small creak was a thief at the door. Even the cat crossing the floor in the dark would set her heart pounding. The days went by, and the neighbors noticed something. The singing had stopped. The window stayed shut. The weaver who had once filled the street with her voice now sat hunched and silent, guarding her stone. This went on until she could bear it no longer. One morning she took the purse, still heavy, still whole, and carried it back to the great house and set it down before the wealthy man. "Please," she said, "take back your silver. I did not understand what I was holding when I took it. It has cost me my sleep and my song, and those were worth far more than I ever knew. Give me back my empty hands and let me have my music again." Then she went home and opened her window, and by midday she was singing once more. The weaver was not poor in the sense we usually mean. She had something the wealthy man had lost and could not buy back at any price. Her hands were empty, and her heart was free. The Buddha understood exactly what happened to her the moment she took the silver. There is a verse in the Dhammapada that names it without a wasted word. "From craving comes grief," it says, "and from craving comes fear." The weaver had known neither grief nor fear over her few clay bowls. It was only when she held something worth losing that the fear arrived. The silver did not make her rich. It taught her, for the first time, how much she now had to lose. This is the strange truth about grasping. The tighter we hold a thing, the more power it gains to wound us, because now its loss hangs over everything. The wealthy man had built his whole life upon holding, and so his whole life had become a kind of guarding. The weaver, with nothing to guard, had been the richer of the two all along. The Buddha put it in 4 words. Contentment, he said, is the greatest wealth. We tend to believe the opposite. We believe that peace is something we add to our lives, one more thing to gather and secure and hold. So we reach for it as we reach for everything else, with hands already closing into fists. And then we are puzzled when it does not come. But peace is not something we grasp. It is what remains when the grasping stops. It was there before we ever began to clutch, like the weaver's song before the silver came, waiting underneath, asking only for room. Picture a hand already full, the fingers wrapped tight around everything they can carry. However much you might want what comes next, a cup of cool water held out to you, a kind word, an hour of rest, there is no way to receive it. The hand would have to open first. The heart is no different. When it is full, the good things cannot reach us. Not because they are far away, but because there is no room left to let them in. The peace we long for often stands close beside us, waiting, while our hands are too full to take it. This is also why the Buddha spoke so often of loving kindness, of a heart whose goodwill reaches out to everything that lives. A heart at ease has room in it, room enough to hold others well. A heart clenched around its worries has no such room. It is not that the kindness has gone. There is simply nowhere left for it to live. Close your hand around a single coin, and it can hold nothing else. So the work in front of us is a small and patient one. Not to force the heart open, since force is only another way of gripping. The work is to loosen, little by little, what we are already holding, so the heart can return to the openness that was always its nature. In another story, passed down for many generations, a rich traveler set out to visit a sage who was said to be the wisest and most contented soul in all the land. He journeyed a long way to reach her. He pictured, as he went, the grand house such a famous teacher must surely keep, the gardens, the servants, the rooms full of fine and beautiful things that a lifetime of wisdom must have earned. Instead, at the top of a low hill, he found a small hut of mud and timber. He stooped through the doorway and looked around in surprise. There was a sleeping mat in one corner, a single bowl, a jug for water, a lamp, and nothing else at all. Bare walls, a swept floor, and the old woman who lived there, sitting at her ease in the middle of the room, as unhurried as the hill itself. The traveler could not hide his astonishment. "Forgive me," he said, looking about the empty room, "but where are all your things? Where is your furniture?" The old woman smiled up at him. "Where is yours?" she asked. The traveler laughed. "Mine? But I am only a traveler here. I am passing through. A man does not carry his whole household with him on the road." "Ah," said the old woman. "So am I. So am I." The traveler stood without a word for a long moment. He had crossed the whole country with his comforts loaded onto the backs of mules, fretting at each river crossing that something might be lost or spoiled. And here was a woman who carried almost nothing, and who seemed lighter and freer and more at home in herself than anyone he had ever met. He had thought he came to learn some great and hidden secret. He understood now that the secret was sitting plainly in front of him, in a bare and peaceful room, and that he had been carrying its opposite the whole way up the hill. We forget so easily that we are travelers. The weaver clutched a purse of silver. The traveler dragged his comforts across a whole country. Their burdens looked nothing alike, yet the weight on the heart was the same. And we carry our own, We settle in. We gather. We build. We load ourselves down with possessions, with opinions, with the heavy idea of who we are and who we still must become, as though we meant to stay here forever and would be needing all of it. But the heart was not made to bear this weight, and it did not start out bearing it. The Buddha taught something that can be surprising to hear. He said that the mind, in its own nature, is radiant. It is only clouded, he said, by troubles that arrive from outside and settle upon it like dust on still water. The clenching is not who we are. It is something that gathered over us, slowly, and can be let go. Think back, if you can, to being very young. There were days when joy came without any effort, when you could lose yourself in a small thing for hours, watching water move or following a patch of light across the floor. A child does not strive to be a good child. A child simply plays. That ease was there from the very beginning, long before the years of measuring and comparing and proving. The holding came later. A disappointment here, a harsh word there, a slow, gathering sense that we must try harder and hold on tighter in order to be safe, to be enough. And year by year, the hands filled. We picked up worry. We took on the fear of falling short. We gathered 100 small burdens and carried them everywhere we went, until we forgot that we were carrying anything at all, and forgot that the hands had ever been empty. The Buddha gave a name to this heaviness and to its ending. He spoke of the burden a person bears through life, and he said that the laying down of that burden is itself a happiness. He did not mean that we must hurl everything away. To let go is not to lose what we love. It is to stop holding it so hard that it begins to hurt us. A thing carried in an open palm is still ours to enjoy and still ours to set down when the time comes. It is only the closed fist that turns the having of a thing into the fear of losing it. And whatever was once picked up can, in time, be laid down again. So there is something you might try here, wherever you happen to be resting. The Buddha taught a way of breathing in which, with each breath that leaves the body, a person practices letting go. It asks for nothing difficult. There is no posture to perfect and nothing to achieve. Let the attention settle onto the body. Feel its weight, held by whatever it rests upon, the floor or the chair or the bed beneath you, holding you up without any effort of your own. Then notice, without blame, what the mind is carrying just now. Perhaps a worry about tomorrow. Perhaps something left undone. Perhaps an old conversation it keeps turning over. You do not need to push any of it away. It is enough to see that you are holding it. And then, as the breath flows out, let the hand of the heart begin to open. You are not throwing anything away. You are only loosening, the way a fist softens once you stop clenching it. Let the out-breath carry the smallest sense of release. Nothing needs to be gripped to keep this moment together. It holds itself. As the breath flows back in, there is no need to reach for it or pull it. It comes on its own, as the weaver's song came back to her once her hands were empty. You do not have to earn the next breath. It arrives. Notice that, even once, something is being given to you, freely, in this very moment, and all that is asked of you is the open hand to receive it. The thoughts will return, and that is no failure. You notice again, and you open again. One small thing, set down for the length of one breath. This is the whole of it, repeated as often as the breath repeats, until the song that was always underneath has room to return. Let your hands rest open for a moment, and let your mind rest with them. There is nothing here to grip, and nowhere you need to be. Stay as long as you like, and we will carry on together whenever you are ready. We have seen how easily the heart fills, and how a crowded heart leaves little room for peace. There is one thing we grip more tightly than almost anything else, though our fingers close around it without our ever noticing. We hold on to the future. We lean toward it all day long. We are forever almost somewhere, almost finished with this task, almost ready to rest, almost at the point where life will settle at last and we can begin to enjoy it. The mind tilts ahead like a traveler bent into a strong wind, always reaching for the next moment before this one has fully arrived. And here is the strange part. When the next moment comes, we meet it the same way. We arrive, and at once we lean again. The resting place keeps moving. We spend our days hurrying toward a there that becomes here the instant we reach it, and then dissolves, because we are already straining toward the one after. Consider how much of our inner life is spent somewhere other than where we are. We rehearse tomorrow's conversation. We replay yesterday's mistake. We worry over an outcome we cannot control, and we build, in our heads, a future in which we are finally calm and finished and enough. And while we are busy furnishing these imaginary rooms, the real one, the room we are actually sitting in, goes unlived. A whole life can slip past like this, spent almost entirely elsewhere. The Buddha had a name for this restless forward leaning. He called it becoming, the urge to be somewhere other than where we are, to be someone we are not yet. He counted it among the deep currents that carry us along and slowly wear us down. And he pointed, over and over, to the single place this current cannot reach, the present moment, the only place, he taught, where a life is ever truly lived. Think of a young man who wished, more than anything in the world, to become the finest flute player in the land. He had real gifts, and he knew it, and his hunger to be great burned in him like a fever that would not break. He heard of an old musician who lived high in the hills, a woman whose playing, it was said, could soothe a crying child or settle a quarrel between neighbors. The young man climbed all the way to her cottage and begged her to take him as a student. She agreed, and on the very first morning he asked the question that was always uppermost in his mind. "Honored teacher, if I study with you and practice faithfully, how long before I become a master?" She looked at him for a moment. 10 years, she said. His face fell. 10 years is so long. What if I practice twice as hard as your other students, from before dawn until long after dark? How long then? 20 years, she said. He thought he had misheard her. 20? But I have just told you I would work harder. Surely that should make it quicker, not slower. And if you give up sleep altogether, she went on, and think of nothing but mastery from morning until night, then it will take you 30 years, and you may never arrive at all. The young man stared at her, lost. I do not understand. Each time I promise to try harder, you tell me it will take me longer. Why would you say such a thing? The old woman picked up her flute and turned it slowly in her hands. Because when both of your eyes are fixed on the far summit, you have none left for the path beneath your feet. A student so desperate to arrive cannot bear to be where he is. And a flute is only ever played from where you stand. note by note, breath by breath. You cannot play tomorrow's music today. There is only this note, now, and then the next one. She raised the flute and played a single long, clear tone and let it fade out across the hillside. Can you give your whole heart to one note? She asked, not as a step towards something greater. Just this one sound, complete in itself, needing nothing more. The young man tried. For a long time he could not. Every note he played was already straining toward the next, already reaching for the distant day when he would be great, and his music came out thin and hurried because of it. Once, when he rushed ahead of himself, and the melody tangled, the old woman laid her hand over his and said only, "Where are you? You are 3 notes ahead of your own breath. Come back and play the one that is here." He did not understand her at first, but he began to listen for that gap between where his mind raced and where his hands actually were, and little by little he learned to close it. And slowly, across many seasons, something in him began to soften. He stopped counting the years. He began to love the note under his fingers more than the master he hoped one day to be. And here is the curious part. As he let go of his race toward greatness, his playing grew deeper and truer, until one evening he noticed that he had not thought about becoming a master in a very long while, and that he was, quite simply, playing. The young man's trouble was never that he wanted to play well. It was that he could not bear to be a beginner, here, now, with this one ordinary note in front of him. His whole attention was spent on a future that did not yet exist, and so the present, where all real playing happens, slipped past him untouched. We do the same with far more than music. We rush through the meal to reach the rest. We rush through the rest to reach the next task. We treat each moment as a hallway to the one after it, and somehow never step into the room. And we promise ourselves that when we finally arrive, when the work is done and the goal is won, then we will relax, then we will be present, then we will truly live. But presence is not a prize handed out at the finish line. It is something we use now or keep putting off forever. The Buddha spoke to this plainly. Do not chase after the past, he taught, and do not lose yourself in dreams of the future. The past is already behind us. The future has not yet come. There is only this present moment, and it is here, in what is actually arising now, that life can be met and seen and lived. In another verse, he made the heart of his path sound almost simple. Let go of what is behind, let go of what lies ahead, and cross beyond. It helps to notice how seldom we are truly in difficulty in the present moment itself. Think back on a hard afternoon. Almost always, what made it heavy was not the bare moment but the weight gathered around it. The dread before, the regret after, the comparison with how it should have gone. Take those away and look at the actual instant, the real sensations of right now, and you often find that this moment, on its own, is something you can meet. The mind suffers in time, in the long shadows of before and after. The body only ever lives in the present, and the present, more often than we expect, is all right. This holds true for far more than hard afternoons. Everything we most value lives only in the present. A friendship is not built in some grand future, but in this ordinary conversation, given our full attention. A meal feeds us only while we are eating it. Even love, which we so often treat as a thing to be locked away and secured for later, can be offered or received only now, in a glance, a word, a small kindness done in the actual moment. When we postpone the present, we are not setting these things aside to enjoy another day. We are missing them altogether. There is another story about an old man who kept a small orchard at the edge of a village and who spent his whole life waiting for the day when everything would finally be ready. In spring, he told himself he would rest once the planting was done. Once the planting was done, he would rest once the trees had fruited. Once they fruited, he decided he would enjoy it all properly after he had built a fine house, and then after the house was furnished, and then after he had set enough aside that he would never have to worry again. There was always one more thing to finish before the living could begin. His young granddaughter often came to sit with him among the trees. She would tug at his sleeve and point. "Grandfather, look at the light caught in the leaves. Grandfather, the figs are ripe. Come and taste one with me." And nearly every time, he answered the same way. "Soon, little one. When I have finished just this, we will sit together and enjoy it all." Not yet. Soon. The seasons turned and turned again. The man's hair went grey, then white. The fine house was built. The orchard hung heavy with fruit. And still the day of rest he had promised himself never seemed to come, because each time he drew near it, some new task rose up that had to be done first. Then one evening, with the sun low and pouring gold across the orchard, the little girl came and stood in front of him with a ripe fig resting in her open hand. She did not say soon. She did not ask him to finish anything. She simply lifted it toward him and said, "Grandfather, it is now. The fig is sweet now. The light is here now. Come and be with me now." Something in her small voice reached the place in him that nothing else had touched. He looked at her, and at the fig, and at the gold light lying across the trees he had tended for 40 years, and somehow never stopped to see. He lowered himself down beside her on the warm earth. He took the fig and bit into it, and it was the sweetest thing he had ever tasted, and his eyes filled, though he was smiling. All those long years he had been waiting to begin his life, and his life had been here the whole time, ripening at his side while he looked the other way. From that evening on, he still tended his orchard, but he tended it as a changed man. He would stop, often, to feel the sun on his face, to taste the fruit, to sit with whoever happened to be near. The work that had once owned him became simply something he did, while the living went on all around it. Now, and now, and now. The little girl handed her grandfather a teaching that the wisest among us spend whole lifetimes trying to learn. The Vietnamese Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once put it in a single short line. Life is available only in the present moment, not in the finished house, not on the day when everything is ready at last. Only here, only now. This is hard for us because we are so certain the good part comes later. We treat the present as a kind of waiting room, a place to sit and fidget until the real thing finally starts. But the present is never a waiting room. It is the only room there is. The future we keep racing toward will, when it comes, be nothing more than another present moment, met by a mind that has already run off ahead. If we cannot taste the fig now, we will not taste it then either. Underneath all this hurry, there is usually a half-hidden belief that we are not yet enough, not yet successful enough, not settled enough, not far enough along to have earned the right to rest. So we drive ourselves toward a future version of ourselves who will finally deserve some peace. But that future person never quite arrives, because the moment we reach one milestone, the standard slips on ahead of us again. The becoming has no finish line. It can only be stepped out of, here, by deciding that this unfinished moment and this unfinished self are already allowed to be at peace. This does not mean the future stops mattering. The grandfather still had an orchard to tend, and so do we. But there is a difference between using the future and trying to live in it. We can plan for tomorrow with a mind rooted in today, as a person sows a seed while standing firmly on the ground. The trouble begins only when we uproot ourselves and go off to dwell in a tomorrow that does not yet exist, leaving the present empty behind us. And there is a real relief in seeing this. The endless sprint toward almost there is exhausting, and it turns out to be unnecessary. We are not actually required to arrive anywhere in order to be at peace. The becoming, the straining to be elsewhere and to be someone other than who we already are, can be set down like any other burden we have been carrying. When it is set down, we find ourselves standing in the very place we spent so long trying to reach. Right here. None of this asks us to throw away our plans or to stop caring about tomorrow. A person can plant an orchard and still taste its figs. The invitation is smaller and kinder than that. It is only to notice, here and there across an ordinary day, that we have arrived. To feel the warmth of the cup before we drink from it. To hear the rain without at once wishing it would stop. To let a single moment be whole in itself, asking nothing of the next. It can be as small as the first sip of something warm in the morning, taken slowly, with nothing else demanded of it. Or a few steps walked simply as walking, feeling the ground meet each foot, instead of as a means of getting somewhere else. These are not grand spiritual feats. They are small returns, a turning of the attention back from the imagined future to the actual present, made as often as we happen to remember to make them. We may find, if we try this even once or twice a day, that the life we kept promising ourselves for later has been on offer the whole time. It does not announce itself. It is made mostly of small, plain moments we usually hurry straight past. A warm room, a known voice, the simple fact that we are breathing. None of that is the waiting room. All of it is the life. And there is a kindness hidden in this. We do not have to wait until we deserve our own lives. We do not have to finish becoming someone before we are allowed to rest. Peace is offered now, in the unremarkable middle of things, to the unfinished people we already are. We have only to stop running long enough to notice that it is here. Take a moment now to arrive fully where you already are. There is nowhere else to get to, and nothing left to reach for. This moment is the only one that was ever really yours. We will move on when this feels like enough, and it already does. There is one thing nearly every person is reaching for, underneath all the other things they reach for. We want to be happy. Whatever we chase on a given day, a bit of success, a comfort, an hour of rest, we are really chasing the contentment we believe it will bring us. Strip away the particulars, and the same wish sits at the bottom of almost everything we do. We simply want to feel well. And yet here is something strange. We pursue happiness more constantly than we pursue anything else, and most of us, if we stopped and were honest, could no longer say what it actually feels like. We have been so busy reaching for it that we have forgotten its taste. We know how to want it. We have lost the knack of simply having it. We look for it too, in a curious way. We assume it must be somewhere far off, in a future we have not reached, or a place we have not gone, in the next achievement, the better situation, the life we will have, once a few more things fall into place. We search the whole horizon for it. And all the while, it tends to be sitting much closer to home than we ever think to look. In a small town, far from anywhere of importance, there lived a poor woman. She worked hard, and she was honest, but she had never had much, and the years of scraping by had worn her down. Then one night, she had a dream. A voice told her, plainly, that a great treasure lay buried beneath the largest bridge of the distant royal city. She woke and laughed it off. But the dream came again the next night, and again the night after that, the very same voice, the very same words, until at last she could not ignore it. She gathered what little she had and set out on the long road to the capital. She was not a woman given to chasing fancies, but something in that dream had felt less like sleep and more like a summons, and a part of her was simply worn out by a life that had never once surprised her. So she told herself that even a foolish hope was better than no hope at all. The road was long and the nights were cold, and more than once she nearly turned back, asking herself what on earth she was doing, an ordinary woman trudging across the country after a voice in her sleep. But each time, she gathered her courage and walked on. It took her many days to get there. When she finally found the great bridge, her heart sank. It stood at the very center of the city, and soldiers guarded it day and night. There was no possible way to dig beneath it unseen. So she lingered nearby, day after day, hoping for a chance that never came, growing poorer and more discouraged. A guard who watched the bridge began to notice her, the same tired woman loitering there morning after morning. At last he came over and asked her, not unkindly, what she was doing. She was too weary to invent a story, so she told him the truth. "I had a dream," she said, 3 nights running. "A voice told me a treasure was buried beneath this bridge. I know how foolish it sounds. I have come a very long way for a dream." The guard threw back his head and laughed. "A dream? You walked all that distance on the strength of a dream? Why, if I paid any mind to my dreams, I would be the greater fool. Only last night I dreamed that in some little town," and he named, without knowing it, the very town she had come from, "in the house of some poor woman, there is a fortune buried right under the kitchen hearth." Can you imagine? Me marching off to dig up a stranger's floor because a dream told me to. He laughed again and shook his head. "Go home, good woman. Dreams are dreams." The woman thanked him and said nothing more. But her heart was pounding. She turned and made the long journey home as fast as her feet would carry her. And when she reached her own small house, she knelt by the hearth where she had cooked her plain meals all her life, and she dug. There, beneath the worn stones she had stood upon 1,000 times, she found the treasure. It had been under her feet the whole time. She had crossed the world only to be told to come home. We are all, in our own fashion, that woman. We hear that peace is real, that contentment is possible, and we set off to find it somewhere far from where we are standing. In a different life, a better situation, a future season when things will finally be easier. The search can carry us a very long way, while the thing we are looking for waits patiently beneath the floor of the ordinary present we keep walking away from. The Buddha said, in the Dhammapada, that there is no happiness higher than peace. Not the excitement of getting what we want, which flares up and fades, but a deeper ease that does not depend on our circumstances staying just so. And this peace, he taught, is not something we build or buy or import from elsewhere. It is what is already here once the grasping grows still. We do not have to manufacture it. We have to stop overlooking it. This is why happiness so often arrives sideways, when we are not hunting it. It comes in an unguarded moment, washing the dishes, walking under trees, sitting with someone we love, and saying nothing in particular. We notice, with mild surprise, that we are content and that we did absolutely nothing to earn it. It was simply allowed to surface, because for once we were not reaching past it towards something else. There is an old habit in us of treating happiness as a distant country we must somehow earn our way into. We picture a border we will one day cross, after which everything will be well. But no such border exists. There is only this life, this day, this breath, and the question of whether we are present enough to feel the good already in it. The woman in the story did not gain her treasure by traveling. She gained it by coming home and looking down. What she needed was never in the far city. It lay beneath the stones she stood on every morning. It helps to ask, plainly, what a living being actually needs in order to be well. Strip away all our complicated wanting and look underneath, and you find only a few simple things. The first is nourishment, something to feed us and keep us alive. For us, this is more than bread. We hunger for warmth, for beauty, for company, for work that means something, for the small daily things that make life feel worth living. A child reaches for milk, and a grown person reaches, in 100 subtler ways, for the same assurance that life is feeding them, that there is something here worth staying for. When we feel truly nourished, the heart brightens almost on its own. The second is safety, a refuge. Some corner of the world where we are not under threat, where we can lower our guard and rest, free from harm. We look for it in walls and locks, but also in trustworthy company, in places and among people where we need not brace ourselves, where we can soften and simply be. A frightened heart cannot rest, however soft the bed beneath it. And there is a third need, one that belongs especially to us, because our minds carry so much. We need, every so often, to put things down, to let go, to set aside the load, to clear out what we have been holding. Without that release, even a person with plenty to eat and a safe place to sleep grows heavy and weary inside. This third need is the one our age understands least. We are taught how to gather and how to guard, how to earn our nourishment and build our safety. We are rarely taught how to set anything down. And so we grow skilled at filling our lives and helpless at emptying them until we are weighed down by the very abundance we worked so hard to collect. Here is the strange trouble most of us live in. We often have the first two needs met more fully than we realize. We are fed. We are, for the most part, safe. And still we feel restless and unwell because the third need goes unmet. We never put anything down. We carry every worry, every plan, every old hurt, all at once, all the time. The hunger we keep trying to feed with more food and more safety is really a hunger for release. There is an old story that points to exactly this. A certain king had everything a man could possibly gather. Vast lands, a full treasury, a palace of every comfort. and yet he was miserable. A heaviness sat on him that no feast could lift, and no entertainment could shift. He could not sleep. He had no appetite for any of his pleasures. His physicians examined him and found nothing wrong with his body, and could do nothing for him. It seemed a strange affliction indeed, that a man who possessed everything should be the most wretched soul in his own kingdom, while beggars at his gate still found reasons to laugh. At last an old adviser came before him. "Your sickness is not in the body," she said, "and so no medicine will reach it. But there may be one cure. Somewhere in your kingdom, find a person who is truly happy, completely content, lacking nothing. Take the shirt from that person's back and wear it, and you will be well." The king sent messengers out across the whole land. They went to the rich and found them anxious about losing what they had. They went to the powerful and found them gnawed by rivalries and fears. They went to the famed and the clever and the beautiful, and every single one, however blessed they seemed, had some complaint, some lack, some worry that robbed them of rest. Nowhere in all the kingdom could the messengers find a soul who was simply, wholly content. It began to seem to them that such contentment did not exist at all, that every life, however gilded, carried its own hidden ache. Then one evening, footsore and ready to give up, they passed a field at dusk and heard something they had not heard in all their searching. A man was singing, not performing, not trying to be heard, just singing to himself out of plain gladness, the way water spills over stones because it cannot help it. They found him resting against a tree, a humble shepherd, watching the last light on the hills. "Are you happy?" they asked him. "As happy as any man alive," he said. "Truly content, lacking nothing at all?" He smiled. "I have eaten my fill today. I have a warm place to lie down tonight. The evening is beautiful, and I am here to see it. What is there to lack?" The messengers could hardly believe their fortune. "Then we must have your shirt," they cried. "The king needs it. He will pay you anything you ask." At this the shepherd laughed for a long time. When he could finally speak, he raised his arms and showed them. He had no shirt. He was too poor to own one. He had nothing at all, and he had everything, and the two were somehow the same thing. The messengers went back and told the king what they had found, and the king understood. The happiest man in his kingdom owned less than anyone and wanted for nothing, because he had laid down the one burden the king had never been able to put down. The endless wanting, the reaching for more. The king had the first two needs met 1,000 times over. He had nourishment beyond counting and a fortress of safety around him. What he had never tasted was the third thing, the release, the letting go. He had spent his life gathering, and gathering cannot make a person well. Only the putting down can do that. This is the secret hidden inside the search for happiness. It is not something we add to ourselves. It is something we uncover once we set down enough of what we have piled on top of it. The Buddha described those who had found this freedom in a lovely way. They possess nothing, he said, and they feed on joy. They have stopped clutching, and so happiness, which was never far off, is finally free to reach them. We tend to believe we must become happy by acquiring. The shepherd shows us the other road. We become happy by needing less, by holding looser, by letting the heart open its hand. The shirt the king was looking for could never be taken from anyone, because it was never a shirt at all. It was the willingness to want what one already has. This is not resignation, and it is not the dimming of desire into grey indifference. The shepherd was not numb. He was singing. A heart that wants less is not a smaller heart but a freer one, with room to delight in what is actually present, rather than aching for what is not. The looser its grip, the more it can take in. This is the freedom the whole of this path is pointing toward, and it asks us to give up nothing but our own exhaustion. There is no need to give away everything we own, or to envy the shepherd under his tree. The point is gentler. It is to notice that the conditions for our own contentment are very likely already present, closer and humbler than we keep imagining. Most of us right now are fed. Most of us right now are safe enough. The thing that remains, the only thing truly missing, is the willingness to stop reaching for a moment and let ourselves receive what is here. We might practice this simply by pausing here and there to notice what is already good. The warmth of a room, a meal on the table, the face of someone who loves us, breath moving easily through the body. These are not small things pretending to be large. They are the very things the whole world is striving to reach by longer and harder roads. And they are, most of them, already in our hands. To see this, even for a moment, is a kind of homecoming. It is the woman kneeling at her own hearth. It is the king understanding, at last, that the cure was never a shirt. We spend so much of life looking outward and far ahead for what was, all along, beneath us and within us. Happiness was never waiting at the end of the search. It was already present at the start, asking only that we grow still enough to know it. And to know it even once is to begin to trust that it will be there again, not somewhere far ahead, but here, wherever we happen to be standing. Stay here a little while in the ease that asks nothing of you. You do not need to add a single thing to this moment to make it whole. The next part will be waiting for you with no hurry at all. Letting go sits at the very heart of everything the Buddha taught. It may also be the most misunderstood part of it. For many of us, the words "let go" bring a flicker of unease. They can sound like loss. We picture ourselves giving up the things we love, releasing our hold on everything we have worked for, growing cold and distant from the world and the people in it. Letting go can start to sound like a kind of defeat, a surrender, a turning away from life. If that were what it meant, we would be right to resist it. No one wants to stop caring. No one wants to go numb. But this is one of the great misunderstandings, and clearing it away changes everything that follows. Letting go is not the same as pushing the world away. It does not ask us to lose what we hold dear, or to go cold and distant from the people we love. What it offers is something far warmer than that, and much closer to relief than to loss. To see it clearly, we have to look at what we are actually being asked to release. And it turns out we are not being asked to give away a single thing we love. We are only being asked to loosen the painful grip with which we hold it. What we set down is not the world, but our stranglehold on it. And in the space that opens when the hand relaxes, something unexpected arrives. What we find there is ease and room and a life that feels somehow larger than before. There are two ways to hold on, and we usually notice only one of them. The The first is obvious. We clutch. We grasp at what we want and refuse to let it go. But there is a second grip, just as tight, that hides itself well. We push. We shove away what we do not want. We brace against it. We strain to be rid of it. And pushing something away, hard, is its own kind of holding on. The hand is just as clenched whether it is grabbing or shoving. This is why letting go is not the same as rejecting. When we reject something, fight it, resist it with all our strength, we are still bound to it, still gripping, still caught. The angry person who storms out of an argument carries it with them for hours afterward. The worry we try to force out of the mind only digs in deeper. Real letting go is softer than rejection and far more free. It is neither grabbing nor shoving. It is opening the hand and letting things be as they are, right here, without our having to clench around them at all. Picture holding a handful of sand. Grip it tightly, and it squeezes out between your fingers. The harder you clench, the more you lose. Try instead to crush it away from you, and you lose it just the same. But hold your palm open and flat, and the sand simply rests there, going nowhere at all. So it is with most of what we love. The open hand keeps what the clenched fist drives away. And there is a particular happiness in this that is easy to miss. It is the happiness of relief, the ease of setting down a heavy load at the end of a long walk, the breath that comes when a worry finally loosens its hold. We are used to looking for happiness in getting and gaining, but some of the sweetest moments in any life are moments of release, when something we have been carrying for too long is finally allowed to fall away. An old story tells of a man who longed for peace and was certain he knew where to find it. He lived in a busy town, and he had decided that the town was the cause of all his troubles. The noise of the market, the demands of his neighbors, the endless small frictions of living among people. If only I could get away from all of this, he would say, I would finally have some peace. So one day he did. He gave up his house and his trade and walked far up into the hills until he found a small, empty hut beside a stream, miles from any other soul. Here, at last, he thought, my troubles are behind me. For a day or two, it was blissful. The silence, the running water, the wide open sky. But then, slowly, something familiar began to creep back in. In the stillness of the hut, with nothing left to distract him, his own mind grew louder than the market had ever been. Old arguments replayed themselves. Worries he was sure he had left behind in the town arrived in the hills, fully formed. He lay awake at night, more restless than he had ever been, and he could not understand it. He had done everything right. He had left the whole world behind. Why had his suffering followed him all this way? One morning an old woman, who gathered herbs along the stream, passed by his hut and found him sitting outside with his head in his hands. She asked what troubled him, and out it all came. How he had given up his entire life to find peace, and walked all this way, and yet felt no more peaceful than before. The old woman listened to the end. Then she said something he did not expect. You carried it all here with you, she said. Did you imagine your trouble lived in the marketplace? It lives in here. And she laid a hand over her own heart. You left nothing behind when you climbed these hills. You brought the whole of yourself along, and the whole of yourself is where the trouble has always been. The man was quiet for a long while. Then what was the point of coming all this way? he asked at last. Perhaps, she said, only to learn that the journey was never going to do it for you. Peace is not sitting in some emptier place, waiting for you to arrive. You will not find it on this hilltop any more than you found it in the town, because it was never a question of where you stand. It is a question of what you are holding and whether you are willing to set it down. Learn that, and you could have your peace in the middle of the loudest market in the world. The man stayed on in the hills a while longer, but he stopped waiting for the place to do the work for him. He began instead to look honestly at what he had been carrying, the grudges he had nursed for years, the fears he fed each night before sleep, and slowly, not by fighting them but by loosening his hold on them one at a time, he found the very thing he had come looking for. In time, he walked back down to the town. The market was as loud as ever. His neighbors were as demanding as ever. But something in him had changed, and the noise no longer reached the place where his peace now lived. The man's mistake is one nearly all of us make. We assume our unease comes from our circumstances, and so we set about changing the circumstances. A different town, a different job, a different person beside us, and then, surely, we will be at peace. Sometimes a change of circumstances truly does help. But if the grip inside us stays the same, we soon find the old restlessness waiting for us in the new place, having traveled there with us unnoticed. The Thai forest teacher Ajahn Chah, who spent his life on this very question, said it plainly. Peace, he taught, is not found in a forest or on a hilltop, nor is it handed to us by a teacher. It is found in the same place as our agitation, which is to say, within us. This sounds like a hard saying, but it is good news. It means we do not have to rearrange the entire world before we are allowed to rest. The peace we are looking for is not somewhere else, kept from us by our circumstances. It is available wherever we happen to be standing, the moment we are willing to loosen our hold. And it means letting go was never about rejecting the world or running away from it. The man did not need to give up the town. He needed to give up his grip. We can live fully in the middle of our lives, with all their noise and people and demands, and still be free, because the freedom was never a matter of the noise. It was always a matter of the holding. There is a freedom in seeing this that the man could never have found by walking farther. As long as he believed his peace depended on the world being a certain way, he was at the mercy of a world that was never going to fully cooperate. The moment he understood that his peace depended only on his own willingness to loosen his grip, it returned to his own hands. Nothing outside him had to change first. That is a kind of release no change of scenery can ever offer. There was also a potter, loved throughout her region for the beauty of the cups she made, and a young apprentice who came to learn the craft from her. The apprentice soon noticed something strange about his teacher. She made the most exquisite cups, thin and graceful, glazed in colors like the first light of morning. And yet she seemed entirely untroubled whenever one of them broke. A cup would slip from a shelf and shatter on the floor, and where the apprentice would have cried out in dismay, the potter would simply look at the pieces, nod once, and sweep them up without the smallest sign of distress. One day a traveling merchant came and bought her finest cup, the loveliest thing she had ever made. As he lifted it to admire the glaze, it slipped from his fingers and broke on the stone floor. The merchant was horrified and began to apologize over and over. But the potter only smiled and put him at ease with a few kind words and seemed perfectly untroubled. When the merchant had gone, The apprentice could hold his question in no longer. "Teacher," he said, "how can you bear it? That was the most beautiful cup you ever made. How are you not heartbroken?" The potter bent down and picked up one of the broken pieces and held it in her open palm. "Let me tell you a secret," she said. "On the day I finish a cup, while it is still whole and perfect in my hands, I already see it broken. I hold it knowing that one day it will slip, or crack, or simply wear away to dust, as all things do in their time. I do not push that knowledge away from me. I hold it close, and this is what it gives me. Because I know the cup is already, in a way, broken, I am free to love it completely while it is here. I drink from it. I feel its warmth in my hands. I watch the light move through the glaze. I am not anxiously standing guard over it against a loss I am pretending will never come. I made my peace with the loss long ago, and so I am free, at last, simply to enjoy the cup." She set the piece gently back down. "People think the ones who can let go are the ones who care the least," she said. "It is the other way around. The ones who cannot let go are often the ones who can never quite enjoy what they have, because they are too busy being afraid of losing it." The apprentice carried those words with him for the rest of his days. He had arrived believing that to hold something lightly was to love it less. He left understanding the opposite. It is the tight, fearful grip that keeps us from ever fully having what is already in our hands. The open hand holds the cup just as surely and gets to enjoy it besides. This is the heart of what letting go really means, and it is almost the reverse of what we feared. We worried that letting go would cost us the things we love. In truth, it is the grip that costs us. When we clutch at someone or something out of the fear of losing them, we are not really with them at all. We are with our fear. The anxious grip slips a pane of glass between us and the very thing we are trying so hard to hold. The image the potter described was a real teaching of Ajahn Chah, who would hold up a glass and say that, for him, it was already broken. Because he understood that the glass would one day break, he could enjoy it fully now and feel no despair when at last it did. This is not coldness. It is the warmest kind of love there is, a love that holds its dear ones close without strangling them, that says a wholehearted yes to them now, without demanding that they last forever. And it points to why letting go brings such relief rather than such loss. Ajahn Chah offered a simple way to measure it. If you let go a little, he said, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. Not loss at the end of that road. Peace. The hand that releases is not left empty. It is left open, and an open hand is finally free to rest. It helps to remember that everything we hold is on its way somewhere, ourselves included. The seasons turn, children grow, the people we love change, and so do we. This is not a tragedy to brace against. It is simply the nature of a living world. When we stop demanding that things stay fixed forever, we are no longer secretly at war with the way life actually is, and a long, low ache we had carried so long that we no longer even noticed it begins, at last, to ease. None of this means we must hold everything at arm's length or pretend we do not care. We are human. We love, we want, we hope, and we are meant to. The invitation is only to notice the difference between holding and clenching. to carry the people and things we love with open hands rather than clenched fists, to let ourselves enjoy what is here now without the constant bracing against the day it will be gone. We might notice, across an ordinary day, the small places where we are gripping, the conversation we are straining to control, the outcome we are clutching at, the minor irritation we keep shoving against. And we might try, here and there, simply loosening our hold, without throwing anything away or giving anything up, just opening the hand a little and letting things be as they already are. Nearly always, what follows is not loss. It is relief, a breath, a little more room in which to live. Over time, this loosening becomes less an effort and more a habit of the heart. We catch ourselves clenching, and almost out of kindness to ourselves, we let the hand fall open again. Life keeps offering us its cups, beautiful and breakable, and we slowly learn to receive each one fully, for as long as it is ours to hold. Loosen your hold on the day for a moment, and let everything be just as it is. Nothing needs fixing now, and nothing needs deciding. Rest a while, and we will go on from here in a little while. There are some things we can set down the moment we decide to, and there are others that will not let go of us, no matter how much we wish they would. This was something the Buddha understood well. A great part of his teaching is given to exactly these stubborn holds, the fears and cravings and worn habits that grip us without our consent, and to the patient art of coming free of them. Much of what we carry, we hold by choice, and could release if we truly chose to. But anyone who has tried to let go of something deeper knows it is not always so simple. There are fears that grip us against our will, habits that move our hands before we can stop them, old patterns of thought that run on and on, long after we have begged them to be still. To someone caught in one of these, the advice to simply let go can sound almost unkind, because they would if they could, and they cannot. These are the things that grip us. We did not choose them, and we cannot just decide them away. And how we meet them, these deeper and more stubborn holds, makes all the difference between suffering under them for a lifetime and slowly, patiently coming free. If there is such a thing in you, some fear or habit or heaviness you have all but given up on, then what follows is especially for you. There is more hope in it than you may have been led to believe. The first thing to understand about these deep holds is that we did not invent them on purpose. No one wakes one morning and decides to be afraid or to fall into the same painful pattern again and again. These things were formed in us, often long ago, frequently by circumstances we never chose. A fear was learned in a moment when we truly were not safe. A habit was built, one repetition at a time, until it ran on its own. A way of seeing ourselves was handed to us so early that we mistook it for simple fact. The mind leans, over time, in the direction we have most often led it. The Buddha observed this directly. Whatever we think about and dwell upon again and again, he taught, becomes the inclination of the mind. Travel a route of thought enough times, and it becomes the route the mind takes by default, without even asking us. This is not a flaw in us. It is simply how a mind works, and it is happening in every person alive. There is no blame in finding such grooves in yourself. They are the natural marks of having lived. A young man once came to an old teacher in real distress, certain that something in him could never change. He was quick to anger. It had cost him friendships and filled his days with regret, and he had fought it for years. "I have tried everything," he told the teacher. "I have scolded myself, shamed myself, sworn 100 times to be different. And still, the moment something provokes me, the old anger rises up and takes me over before I can stop it. I have given up. This is simply who I am. Some people are born calm. I was born like this." The teacher listened to all of it. Then, instead of answering, he stood and said, "Walk with me." He led the young man out across a wide field to a place where a deep, bare track was worn into the earth, running straight through the grass. "Do you see this path?" the teacher asked. "How do you suppose it came to be here? Did someone set out to dig it?" "No," said the young man. "It was worn by walking. People have crossed the field this way for so many years that the grass gave up and the ground wore down." "Just so," said the teacher. "No one chose to make a path here. It was made one footstep at a time, by people simply going where they had always gone. And your anger is no different. It is not your nature. It is a path worn into you, one footstep at a time, over years of going the same way. Every time you follow the anger, you walk the track a little deeper. That is why it feels so natural now. Not because it is who you are, but because it is where you have always walked." The young man stared at the worn ground. "Then how do I get rid of it?" he asked. "Do I tear it up?" The teacher smiled. "Have you ever tried to destroy a path by attacking it? You would only trample it deeper. No, you do not tear it up. You leave it be, and you begin, patiently, to walk a different way. The first time, it is hard. There is no path where you are going. The grass is high, and the ground is firm underfoot. But each time you choose the new way, you wear it a little smoother. And each time you do not walk the old way, the grass grows back over it, blade by blade. You need not fight the old path at all. You have only to stop feeding it with your feet and patiently make a new one." The young man took this to heart. He stopped waging war on his anger, which had only ever made it stronger. Instead, when it rose, he noticed it, and where he could, he chose, just once more, a kinder way. Often enough he failed, and walked the old path again, and on those days he did not punish himself, for he understood now that a path is not unmade in a day. On the hard days, he simply returned, the next morning, to the patient work of the new way, without drama and without despair. But slowly, over many seasons, the new way wore smooth beneath him, and the old track, left untraveled, began to vanish under the grass. He never became a different person. He became, more truly, himself, with the deep groove of his temper softened almost to nothing, and a kinder way grown up in its place. What the teacher gave the young man was more than comfort. It was a new way of understanding himself. "This is simply who I am," is one of the heaviest sentences a person can say, because it shuts the door on all change. It takes a pattern, something that was learned and can be unlearned, and mistakes it for an unchangeable essence, a fixed and final fact about us. But almost nothing about us is as fixed as it feels. The fearfulness, the harshness, the old reflex we are sure is permanent was, in nearly every case, worn into us over time, repeated until it began to feel like fate. And what was worn in can, with patience, be worn away. The Buddha pointed to this with great hope. Irrigators guide water wherever they wish it to go, he said. Fletchers straighten the crooked arrow. Carpenters shape the stubborn wood. And in just this way, he taught, the wise shape themselves. He did not pretend it was quick or easy. To shape a mind is harder than to shape wood. But he insisted that it could be done, that we are not simply stuck with whatever we happen to be, that a human being is workable, changeable, free in time to become something other than their old habits. And none of this is done by force. You do not straighten an arrow by snapping it, or shape wood by smashing it. It is done with patience, and with a kind of respect for the material. The very same is true of us. The pace of it deserves patience too. We did not become who we are overnight, and we will not come free overnight either. The grooves took years to wear in, and they may take a good while to wear away. But every single time we choose the kinder way, even once, even clumsily, we are doing the real work, laying down one footstep of a new and better path. Nothing is wasted. None of it is ever too late. There is something else worth knowing about these deeper holds. They do not live only in our thoughts. They live in the body. Notice, sometime, where a worry actually sits. It is rarely just an idea in the head. It is a tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, a held breath, a bracing in the shoulders that have been clenched so long we have forgotten they are clenched. The things that grip us take up residence in the flesh, and often the body goes on holding tight long after the mind has forgotten why. This is why we cannot always think our way free. You cannot reason a clenched stomach into softening. But the body answers to something the thinking mind often overlooks, and that is kindness. A tight place in the body, met not with frustration but with warmth and patience, with a slow breath and a simple willingness to let it be there, will often begin, on its own, to ease. The heart that has been holding on for years is not commanded to release. It is reassured, slowly, until it feels safe enough to. Sometimes, the most freeing thing we can do for a long-held tension is not to attack it but to lay a hand of attention on it, as one might rest a warm palm on an aching shoulder, and simply keep it company until it is ready to ease. Picture a man who was visited every evening by his worries. Each night, as the light failed and he sat alone in his small house, they would arrive. Worries about money, about his health, about things he had said and things he had left undone. They came like a crowd of unwelcome guests, filling his rooms, all talking at once, until he could hear nothing else. And every night he did battle with them. He shouted at them to leave. He tried to bar the door. He paced and argued and pleaded. But the harder he fought to drive them out, the louder and bolder they grew, and the longer they stayed. He was wearing himself to nothing in a war he lost every single night. One day, a traveler stopped at his house and, seeing how worn and weary he looked, asked what was the matter. The man explained about his nightly visitors and how nothing he did would be rid of them. The traveler considered this for a while. "You are fighting them," she said. "That is the very reason they will not go. They feed on the fight. Tonight, do not fight. When they arrive, do not bar the door against them. Set out cups for them. Invite them to sit. Let them say whatever they have come to say, and do not argue. Simply let them be there." The man thought this was strange advice, but he was far too tired to argue with it. So that night, when the worries came crowding in as they always did, he did not leap up to fight. He let them in. "Very well," he said. "Sit down. I am listening." And something curious happened. With no one pushing against them, the worries seemed to lose their force. They said their piece, and he let them say it. He did not feed them with struggle, and he did not feed them with belief. He simply sat among them and breathed and allowed them to be there in the room. One by one, with nothing left to push against, they grew quieter. And before the night was over, he noticed that the rooms had emptied and he was sitting alone, at ease, having driven nothing out at all. He did not cure his worries in a single night. They still came, often, but he had learned the secret of them, which was that they grew strong on his resistance and weak on his welcome. The nights he met them with open hands were short ones. The nights he forgot and fell back into fighting were long. And gradually, with no battle left to sustain them, his evening visitors came less often, stayed a shorter while, and troubled him less and less. What had changed was not the worries themselves, but his whole relationship to them. He had stopped treating every anxious thought as an enemy to be defeated, and started treating it as a tired guest who wanted, in the end, only to be heard and then to go. And a guest who is made welcome, it turns out, rarely overstays. There is a deep truth folded into that simple story, one the Buddhist teachers have pointed to for a very long time. So much of what holds us precisely because we are fighting it. The fear we are ashamed of, and so wrestle with in secret, grows stronger in the dark. The sadness we will not allow ourselves to feel sits all the heavier for being refused. The habit we attack with self-hatred digs in against the attack. Resistance, which feels like the road to freedom, is so often the very thing keeping us bound. The way out is rarely force. It is nearly the opposite of force. It is turning toward what grips us with patience instead of war, with curiosity instead of shame, with kindness instead of the whip. This does not mean we approve of everything we find in ourselves or hand our lives over to it. It means we stop adding the second struggle, the fight against the fight, and in that ceasefire, something is finally free to shift. And there is real hope here, especially for the things that have gripped us the longest. However permanent they feel, they are not, and however much they seem like the whole of us, they are something smaller and more passing than that. A deep pattern is only weather moving through. It is a path worn in that can be worn away, a visitor who will leave once we stop barring the door. We are not asked to tear anything out by the roots tonight. We are asked only to stop fighting, to meet ourselves with the same patience we would offer a frightened friend, and to trust that what is held with kindness, in its own time, loosens. This is perhaps the tenderest form of letting go there is. Not the brisk release of something we never much cared for, but the slow unclenching of a hand that has been closed so long it had forgotten it could open. It cannot be hurried, and it cannot be forced. It can only be invited, again and again, with warmth, until one day we notice that the hand has come open on its own. Perhaps the kindest place to begin is simply with how we speak to ourselves about our own stuck places. When we notice the old fear, or the old habit, or the familiar heaviness arriving, we might try meeting it without the usual scolding. Not, "There is something wrong with me," but something closer to, "Ah, here is this old pattern again, worn deep, not my fault, and not the whole of who I am." That small change of tone, from war to kindness, is not a small thing at all. It is the beginning of the loosening. We spend so much of our lives as our own harshest judges, attacking the very places in us that are most in need of care. To turn toward them instead with patience, as we naturally would towards someone we love who is struggling, is to begin setting down a grip we may have been holding for our whole lives without ever knowing it. Let yourself be here, just as you are, with nothing to mend and no one to become. Whatever you are carrying, you can set it down for now, or simply let it rest beside you. We will continue when the time feels right. Of all the paths to peace the Buddha pointed out, there was one he praised above almost any other, calling it of great fruit and great benefit. It was not a grand or complicated thing. It was simply the breath, the plain, ordinary breath moving in and out of the body, which he taught could carry a person all the way from restlessness to deep release. There is a good reason he loved it so. The breath is the one thing that is always with us. We can lose our money, our health, our company, our plans. We cannot lose our breath, not while we are alive. It is the most faithful companion we will ever have, with us, from the first moment to the last, asking nothing of us, requiring no belief, no equipment, no special place. It is always here, always available, the very moment we remember to turn toward it. And the breath has something to teach us about letting go that words can only point at. For the breath is itself a small, endless lesson in release. We breathe in, and we hold for the briefest moment, and then we let go. In and out, all day and all night, a constant rhythm of taking in and releasing, gripping and letting fall. The body has been practicing letting go, on its own, with every breath, our whole lives long. Think of it, from the very first breath we ever drew, to this one. Now, the breath has been rising and falling through everything that has ever happened to us. Through our brightest days and our hardest ones, through every fear and every joy, it has kept its faithful rhythm, never once abandoning us. It is the single continuous thread running through the whole of a life. And every turn of it has carried the same small teaching. Take in what is given, then release it, and trust that the next breath will come. Imagine a grown man who had never learned to float. As a boy, he had been frightened of deep water, and the fear had followed him into his adult years until he was secretly ashamed of it. One summer, he made up his mind to be rid of it, and he asked an older woman from his village, who had swum in the lake every day of her life, to teach him. They waded out together to where the water was calm and came up only to their chests. "Now," she said, "lean back and let the water hold you." He tried, but the instant his feet left the bottom, panic took him. He stiffened, threw his arms around, kicked hard, and promptly sank, coming up coughing and gasping. They tried again, and the very same thing happened. Again and again. The harder he fought to stay up, the faster he went under. "I cannot do it," he said at last, wiping his eyes. "My body was not made for this. It only wants to sink." The old woman shook her head. "Your body floats perfectly well," she said. "It is one of the easiest things in the world. A sleeping child would float. The trouble is not your body at all. The trouble is everything you are doing to hold yourself up. Each time you feel yourself begin to sink, you fight, and it is the fighting that sinks you. Floating is not something you do. It is something you stop doing. He did not understand. But if I do nothing, surely I will go straight under. Try it and see, she said. I will keep my hand beneath your back the whole time. You are safe. Lie back, and this once, do not try to float. Do not try to do anything at all. Just stop. Let your arms rest. Let your legs hang. Let your breath move in and out. And let the water do what water knows how to do. So he leaned back, with her hand resting lightly beneath him, and for the first time he did not struggle. He let his body grow heavy. He let the air fill his chest and felt himself lift a little with each breath in. And slowly, it dawned on him that the water was holding him. It had been ready to hold him all along. He had simply been too busy fighting it to allow it. After a while, the old woman drew her hand away, and he did not even notice, because there was nothing left for her hand to do. He was floating, gazing up at the wide sky, carried by the very thing he had spent all morning battling. He stayed there a long while, weightless and amazed. His whole life, he had believed that staying afloat was a matter of effort, of working hard enough and holding on tightly enough. And here was the secret no one had told him. He was held not by his striving, but by his stopping. The moment he gave up trying to keep himself up, something broader and steadier than his own effort kept him up instead. It was, he thought afterward, the strangest lesson he had ever learned, that there are some things in life you cannot reach by trying, only by ceasing to try. The water had asked nothing of him but that he stop fighting it. And the moment he did, it gave him the very thing he had been straining for all along. The swimmer was carried the moment he stopped working at it. And there is something in us that behaves exactly like that water, always ready to hold us up, if only we would stop fighting it. It is the breath. You are breathing right now without having arranged it. You breathed all through last night's sleep, and through every hour today that you were lost in thought, never once waiting for your instructions. We say, I breathe, but most of the time the breath is breathing us, rising and falling on its own, moved by something steadier than our worried minds. There is rest in remembering that. Underneath all our effort and striving, the most essential thing is already being taken care of. We do not have to hold ourselves together by force. And yet, like the swimmer, we fight it. When we are anxious, we grip the breath, holding it high and tight in the chest, or forcing it, or forgetting to let it out fully, bracing as if bracing could keep us safe. When we are frightened, it goes shallow and quick. Let it lengthen and soften, and the heart, taking its cue from the body, often follows. All that gripping only wears us down, just as the swimmer's struggling only sank him. We grip the breath as we grip everything else, as if our holding were the thing keeping us safe, when in truth, it is mostly the thing keeping us tired. But the breath, like the water, is ready to carry us the moment we stop fighting it. We do not have to manufacture calm. We only have to stop interfering and let the breath settle into its own natural rhythm, which it will do, on its own, given half a chance. The long, slow out-breath that comes when we finally stop holding on is the body's own sigh of relief, its way of saying, at last, you can let that go now. You can feel this for yourself, anytime. Notice what happens at the very end of an out-breath, in the small pause before the next one arrives. There is often a flicker of stillness there, a tiny rest, a release so brief that we usually miss it altogether. The body lets the old breath go, and then, without any effort from us, the new one comes. We do not have to pull it in. We trust, without ever thinking about it, that the next breath will arrive. And it does. In that small, constant trust is the whole of what we are trying to learn, to release what is finished, and to trust that what we need will come. We already make this gesture countless times a day without noticing. When a hard task is finally finished, or a fright passes, or we sink into a chair at the end of a long day, the body lets out a long sigh, all on its own, a deep out-breath that drops the shoulders and softens the belly. No one ever taught us that sigh. It is the body letting go, unbidden, the moment it is allowed to. The breath already knows the gesture of release by heart. We are only learning to make it a little more often, and on purpose. The Buddha understood this so well that he made it the heart of his most treasured teaching. He guided people to train themselves on the out-breath, in the art of letting go. Breathing out, he taught, one practices release. Each exhale becomes a small rehearsal for the larger letting go, a chance, dozens of times a minute, to feel what it is to release. We need not look far for a teacher of letting go. We carry one in our own chest, and it has been showing us the lesson, patiently, since the day we were born. There is real comfort in seeing that we are not being asked to invent the skill of letting go out of nothing. We already know how. We have done it with every breath of our lives. The releasing we find so hard everywhere else, the loosening of our hold on a worry, a grievance, a fear, is the very same motion the body makes with ease each time it breathes out. We are only being asked to carry into the wider rooms of our lives something the breath has been patiently teaching the body all along. There is one more thing the breath plainly disproves, and a small story shows it well. There was a man who crossed a wide log over a shallow brook every single day on his way to and from his fields. He had done it for years without a single thought, his feet finding their own way across the smooth wood, while his mind wandered wherever it pleased. One day, a younger neighbor walked with him, and as they reached the log, the neighbor asked, out of simple curiosity, "Tell me, how do you keep your balance so easily? Where exactly do you place your feet? What do you do with your arms?" The man had never once considered it. And now, halfway across, he began to think about it. He looked down at his feet. He tried to work out what each one was doing, to take charge of the placing and the balancing that had always happened on their own. And at once he began to wobble. His arms shot out, his legs went uncertain, and he had to crouch and grab the log with his hands to keep from tumbling into the shallow water, where he sat, bewildered, on a crossing he had made 1,000 times without a thought. "How strange," he said, climbing off. "I have walked this log since I was a boy. My feet have always known the way. It was only when I tried to take the wheel from them that I lost my balance." The young neighbor laughed and gave him a hand up, and the two of them crossed the rest of the brook in easy silence, the man's feet finding their own sure path again the moment he let them. The body holds a wordless intelligence that the thinking mind, for all its cleverness, does not possess and cannot improve upon. The breath belongs to that same deep knowing. Left alone, it is wise. It is when we seize the controls, anxiously, that the trouble starts. Think how much the body manages without ever consulting us. The heart beats. Food is digested. A cut on the hand knits itself slowly back together. None of it waits for our instructions. The breath is unusual only in one way. It is the single one of these deep, automatic processes that we can also join consciously, slowing it, feeling it, letting it settle. Left to itself, it runs perfectly well, like all the rest. But unlike the rest, it will keep us company if we turn toward it. That is what makes it such a rare gift, a bridge between the part of us that simply lives on its own and the part of us that can choose to pay attention. So the breath asks very little of us. It does not ask us to do it correctly, or to make it special, or to force it into some perfect shape. It asks only that, now and then, we notice it. That we let our attention rest, for a moment, on this rising and falling that is always going on, and come home to it. And what a homecoming it is! Wherever our thoughts have wandered, into the past, into tomorrow, into worry or regret, the breath is only ever happening now. It cannot be breathed yesterday or breathed in advance. To feel it is to arrive instantly in the present moment, the one place where we are actually alive. The Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who taught the breath to so many, called conscious breathing his anchor. When the feelings came and went like clouds across a windy sky, the breath was the steady thing he could always return to and be held. This is perhaps the breath's greatest gift. It is a doorway that is never locked. We can be anywhere, in any state, caught in any storm of thinking, and the door is right there, the next breath, waiting to be walked through. We do not have to travel to find it, or wait for the right conditions, or prepare ourselves in any way. The mind may be far off in some imagined trouble, but the breath is always here, and to feel it even once is to be set down, softly, back into the present, where the imagined trouble cannot follow. Tomorrow cannot be breathed. Yesterday cannot be breathed. Only this breath, now, can be felt, and feeling it, we have come home. And we can come home as many times as we wander off, which is to say, endlessly, without ever once using up the welcome. None of this is a technique to master. There is nothing here to get right. It is only an invitation, offered for whenever you might want it, to remember the friend you carry in your own body. In a difficult moment, or an ordinary one, you might simply feel a single breath move through you, and notice, especially, the letting go at the end of it, the soft release of the out-breath. You need not change it or deepen it or fix it. You need only feel it happen and let it remind you that release is not some far-off achievement. It is happening in you right now and will go on happening, all on its own, for as long as you live. Over time, the breath can become a kind of refuge we carry everywhere. Not a refuge we have to build or earn, but one that is simply always there, in the chest, ready. Waiting at a doorway, walking down a road, lying awake, working through something hard, we can let a little of our attention drop down out of the busy head and into the slow, faithful rising and falling, and feel, for just that moment, held. The breath asks nothing of us. It only keeps offering, over and over, the same small mercy. Here is the present, and here is release, and here they are again, and again, free for the taking. Rest a moment and let the breath do just as it pleases, with no help at all from you. Feel it carry you, as it has carried you all your life. We will begin again soon, whenever you like. We often imagine that letting go must be a single dramatic act. One brave moment in which we finally release the thing we have been clutching and are free at last. We wait for that moment to arrive, and when it does not, or when we try it and find our fingers still curled tight, we decide we have failed, that we are simply not the sort of person who can let go. But this is not how it works, and the Buddha never taught that it was. He taught a gradual path, a long, patient unfolding, in which the heart loosens its hold not all at once, but by degrees, in layers, over time. Release was not, in his teaching, a cliff to leap from. It was a slope we walk down slowly, growing a little freer with each step, a path that reveals itself one stage at a time. There is great kindness in seeing letting go this way. It means we do not have to wrench ourselves free in one heroic effort. We do not have to be ready, all at once, to give up everything we hold. We have only to take the next small step, and then the one after that, trusting that release deepens on its own as we walk, the way a traveler comes down a mountain, not in a single great leap, but stride by ordinary stride. The old texts describe this unfolding as a series of natural movements, each flowing into the next, like a stream finding its way down toward the sea. We will follow the first two of those movements here, and we will find that neither of them asks us for force. They ask only for a little willingness and a great deal of patience. A traveler once lost her way in a great forest. She had set out at dawn along a path she thought she knew, but somewhere among the trees the path had faded, and by midday she found herself wandering with no idea which way led home. She pressed on, choosing this direction and then that, but every part of the forest looked like every other part. The same trees, the same tangled undergrowth, the same green shadows on every side. The harder she searched, the more turned around she became. By late afternoon she had been walking for hours and was no nearer to anywhere, only more frightened, more weary, and beginning to lose hope. She sat down at the foot of a tall tree to rest, close to tears. And as she sat there, she happened to look up and noticed how high this tree rose above all the others around it, its trunk broad, its lower branches sturdy and within easy reach. Something in her, calmer than her panic, suggested she climb. So she did, slowly, branch by branch, until at last her head rose clear above the canopy, and she could see out across the whole forest for the first time. And there it all was, spread out below her. From down among the trees, every direction had looked the same, a solid wall of green with no way through. But from up here she could see the shape of the whole thing. There, not far off, ran the silver thread of a river she knew. There stood the line of hills that rose behind her own village. And there, faint but unmistakable, was the thin break in the trees where the path lay, the very path she had been crossing and recrossing all afternoon without ever seeing it, because she had been too close to it and too frantic to recognize it. She climbed down with the whole map of the forest held clear in her mind and walked home without a single wrong turn. The forest had not changed at all while she was up in the tree. Not one branch had moved. What had changed was how much of it she could see. From inside the tangle, she was hopelessly lost. From a little above it, the way home was plain. She thought, on the walk back, how strange it was that the answer had not come from searching harder. She had searched as hard as she possibly could, and the searching had only spun her in circles. The answer had come from the very opposite of searching. From stopping, from sitting down, from rising, just a little, above the place where she was lost. and she noticed something else besides. She had not needed to climb very high. She had not needed to reach the top of the tallest mountain or rise above the clouds. Just a little height, just a few branches above the tangle, had been enough to turn a hopeless maze into a simple walk home. A small step back had done what hours of frantic searching never could. The traveler's discovery holds a truth about letting go that is easy to overlook. When we are lost in the middle of some trouble, searching harder rarely helps. We turn the problem over and over. We worry at it from every angle, and like the traveler crossing and recrossing her own path, we mostly wear ourselves out going in circles. What helps is not more effort. It is a step back. The old teachers had a name for this stepping back. They called it viveka, a word that means something close to seclusion or drawing aside. It does not mean fleeing our life or turning our back on the world. It means stepping away from the tangle just far enough to see it clearly, as the traveler climbed a little above the forest that had swallowed her. We live most of our days down among the trees, so close to our wants and worries that they fill the whole sky. A small frustration, seen from up close, can seem to blot out everything else. A craving, when we are right inside it, feels like the only thing in the world that matters. We are simply too near to make out the true shape of things. And from that nearness, letting go is almost impossible, because we cannot even see clearly what we are holding, or how tightly, or why. A little stepping back changes all of it. It might be as plain as a walk taken alone, a few minutes of solitude, a morning set apart from the usual rush. Or it might be an inner step backward, a pause in which we watch our own mind from a slight distance, rather than being swept helplessly along inside it. Either way, the effect is the traveler's climb. What looms so large up close turns out to be one small feature in a far wider landscape. And what we can finally see clearly, we discover we can slowly begin to loosen our hold upon. It is a curious thing that so much of letting go begins not with the hand at all, but with the eyes. We assume the work is in the releasing. But before we can release anything, we first have to be able to see it, fully and without panic, and most of us almost never do. We are too tangled up inside our troubles to look at them squarely. To step back is to get, at last, a clear look. And often, once we truly see a thing for what it is, half of its hold on us is already gone. But seeing clearly is only the first movement. To see that we are gripping something, and even to understand why, does not always make the hand spring open. Anyone who has plainly seen the foolishness of a worry and then gone right on worrying knows this all too well. There is a second movement, subtler than the first, and it cannot be forced at all. It is the cooling of the wanting itself, the slow fading of the craving's heat. The old teachers called this viraga, which means something like the fading of passion, the draining away of color, as a fire dies down on its own once no one feeds it any longer. Here is the heart of it. We do not let go of a craving by force, by gritting our teeth and tearing ourselves away from it. That only feeds the struggle. We let go of it by seeing it so clearly, so honestly, and so often that it simply loses its grip on us. The wanting cools. The thing we were certain we could not live without begins, on its own, to matter less, as a grown person slowly outgrows a toy that once seemed the most precious thing on earth. No one has to force them to give it up. They simply, one day, no longer want it. Long ago, A man came to wisdom late in life, and very nearly did not come to it at all. He had spent his first 40 years as a simple shepherd, unlettered and rough, convinced that the world of learning and depth was closed to him forever. "I am too old," he would say whenever anyone suggested he might change his life. "My ways are set hard. A man like me cannot begin again now. It is far too late for that." One day, resting beside a well in the heat of the afternoon, he noticed something he had passed 1,000 times and never truly seen. In the stone rim of the well, where the rope and bucket were hauled up day after day, there were deep grooves worn right down into the rock. He stared at them, puzzled, and turned to an old man sitting in the shade nearby. "Who carved these hollows into the stone?" he asked. "No one carved them," the old man said. "The water carved them. Drop by drop, the dripping of the water over many long years wore those grooves into the hardest stone." The shepherd could scarcely believe it. The water? Soft water wore away hard stone. "Not in a day," said the old man. "Not in a year. One drop at a time, each drop so small it leaves no mark that you could ever see. But drop after drop, season after season, the soft water hollows out the hard stone. It is not the force of any single drop that does it. It is the patience of all of them together." He nodded toward the worn grooves. "You could stand here and strike this stone with a hammer all day, in a fury, and barely chip it. Yet the soft water, asking nothing, in no hurry whatsoever, has carved it like clay. Such is the power of patient things." The shepherd sat a long while, gazing at those worn grooves, and a thought rose up in him that would change the rest of his life. If water as soft as that, he reasoned, with no strength at all in any single drop, can wear clean through stone as hard as this, only by never stopping, then perhaps a man as hard and set as I am is not beyond changing after all. Perhaps I have believed myself unchangeable only because I expected it to happen all at once. Perhaps I, too, could be reshaped, not in a day, and not by force, but drop by patient drop. So at 40 years old, he began. He started to learn, slowly and clumsily at first, just a little each day, expecting nothing dramatic, only the next small drop. And drop by drop, across the years that followed, the rough shepherd was worn into something new, until in time he became one of the wisest and best-loved teachers of his age. He had not forced it. He had simply, like the water, refused to stop. He used to say, long afterward, that the lesson of his whole life was written in the rim of that old well. That the things we believe are too hard to change in ourselves are not changed by great heaves of effort, which exhaust us and leave the stone untouched. They are changed by the soft, steady, patient drop, returning again and again, asking nothing, never stopping, until one day the shape of us is different and we never even felt it happen. This is how letting go truly happens, far more often than through any single dramatic act. Drop by drop. A grip we have held for decades does not usually fall open in one heroic moment. It loosens by degrees, a little each time we see it clearly, a little each time we step back, a little each time we breathe out and allow. For a long while, nothing seems to be changing at all. The stone looks as hard as it ever did. And then one day we notice, almost with surprise, that the thing which used to grip us so fiercely has somehow lost its hold, and we could not even say when it happened. This is worth holding on to during the days when we feel we are making no progress at all. Letting go is mostly invisible while it is happening, The drops keep falling and leave no mark we can see, and so we conclude that nothing is working. But something is working beneath the surface, slowly, as the water works on the stone. Not one of those small moments of release is wasted. They are gathering, patiently, into a freedom we cannot yet see. It helps, on those discouraging days, to remember the well. No single drop that ever fell on that stone could have known it was making any difference at all. Each one simply fell and slid away and seemed to change nothing whatsoever. And yet the grooves are there, deep and undeniable, carved by precisely those drops that felt so useless one at a time. And it means, just as the shepherd discovered, that it is never too late, and we are never too set in our ways. The heart that has gripped something for an entire lifetime can still, drop by drop, learn to open. We have only to stop demanding that it happen all at once, to make our peace with the slow pace of real change, and to keep returning, without drama, to the patient work of release. The water is in no hurry, and it does not doubt itself, and in the end, there is nothing it cannot wear soft. Perhaps the kindest thing to carry away from all of this is simple permission to be patient with ourselves. We do not have to let go of everything today. We have not failed if the old grip is still there tomorrow morning. The path is gradual by its very nature, and there is no rushing a thing that unfolds in its own time. So we might simply look for the small steps and learn to trust them. The moment of stepping back to see a worry a little more clearly. The slight cooling of a want we have finally looked at honestly. The single breath released at the end of a long day. None of these will free us all at once, and none of them has to. Each one is simply another drop. And drops, as the old well taught the shepherd, are how even the hardest things are, in the end, worn soft and made new. We are not behind. We are not failing. We are simply part way down a long and forgiving slope, and the only thing ever asked of us is the next unhurried step. Pause here a while, with nowhere to arrive and nothing to hurry. You have taken today's small steps already, and that is more than enough for one day. We will walk on together when you are ready. There is one thing we cling to more tightly than money, or comfort, or being right, more tightly than almost anything else. And we cling to it so constantly, from the moment we wake, that we scarcely notice we are doing it at all. We hold on to ourself, the idea of who we are, the reputation, the image, the running story of me. The Buddha pointed, again and again, to this deepest holding as the root of much of our unease. Not because there is anything wrong with us, but because the constant work of being someone, of propping up and defending and polishing a self, is tiring, and it never stops. From the moment we wake, a small labor begins. How am I doing? How do I seem? What do they think of me? Am I enough? It runs underneath everything, this labor, like a background hum we have grown so used to that we no longer hear it. And yet beneath all that effort, the Buddha taught, there is something already at rest. A stillness that does not need to be built or defended, because it was never in any danger. The deepest letting go, and the most freeing of all, is the slow loosening of our hold on the self. Not to erase who we are, but to set down the heavy work of constantly being someone, and to rest, at last, in what is simply there underneath. A certain woman was known, all through her town, as the strong one. For as long as anyone could remember, she had been the person others leaned on. When a neighbor was in trouble, they came to her door. When something went wrong, it was she who stayed steady and knew what to do. She was the one with the calm hand and the ready answer, the one who never seemed to falter. And she had carried that name, the strong one, with a certain pride for many years. But somewhere along the way, the name had become a weight. She could no longer remember how to be anything else. If she felt tired, she hid it, because the strong one does not tire. If she felt afraid, she swallowed it, because the strong one is not afraid. People expected her to be a certain way, and so she was that way, always, on the outside, even on the days when inside she felt like anything but. She had grown so busy being the strong one that she had quite lost track of who she was underneath it. One spring she traveled, for the first time in her life, to a distant town where she knew no one, and no one knew her. She arrived weary, took a room at a small inn, and went down to sit in the corner of the common room with a bowl of soup. And there, something unexpected happened. No one looked at her and saw the strong one. No one expected anything of her at all. To the people in that room, she was simply a traveler, a stranger, nobody in particular. The innkeeper set down her soup with a friendly word and asked nothing more. The others talked among themselves and let her be. At first it felt almost uncomfortable, this being no one. She had worn her name so long that its sudden absence left her oddly light, almost unsteady. But as the evening went on, the lightness turned into something like relief. A relief so deep that it surprised her and brought her close to tears. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she did not have to be anything. She did not have to be strong or wise or steady. She could be tired and let it show. She could sit and say nothing and no one minded. She could simply be a person in a room, breathing, resting, alive. On her second evening, the innkeeper sat down across from her for a moment and asked, simply, "And what brings you to our town?" She opened her mouth to give the kind of capable, reassuring answer she always gave back home, and then found that she did not need to. "I think I just needed to rest," she said. It was the truest thing she had spoken aloud in years, and the innkeeper only nodded, as though it were the most natural thing in the world, and refilled her cup. She stayed in that town several days, and the strangest part was this. With no name to uphold, with no one in particular to be, she did not disappear, as some part of her had feared she might. She was still there. In fact, she felt more herself than she had in years. Underneath the strong one, underneath all the holding and the performing, there was simply her, lighter and easier than the heavy figure she had been carrying through her days. She had lost nothing by setting the role down. She had only put down a weight she had mistaken for herself. When at last she went home changed. The name was still there, and the neighbors still came to her door, and she helped them as she always had. But she no longer believed that she was the name. She had felt, for a few days, the lightness that lived beneath it, and she never quite forgot it. Most of us are carrying some version of that name. Perhaps we are the strong one, or the clever one, or the cheerful one, or the one who has it all together. Perhaps we are the one who is owed something, or the one who was wronged, or the one who must never be wrong. Whatever the shape of it, we spend a great deal of our energy keeping it standing, this figure we take ourselves to be, defending it when it is questioned, repairing it when it is bruised, presenting it to the world and anxiously watching to see if the world agrees. It is worth feeling, just for a moment, how much effort this takes. The self is not a thing we have. It is a thing we are constantly doing, building again and again, moment after moment, with our worrying and comparing and rehearsing. And like anything we hold up by continuous effort, it makes us tired and a little afraid, because a thing held up by effort can always fall. You can catch this self at work in the smallest moments. The conversation you rehearse ahead of time, planning how you will come across. The remark from days ago that you keep replaying because it stung your picture of yourself. The small urge to correct someone, to explain, to make sure you are seen the right way. None of these are faults. They are simply the endless, low labor of holding a self together, going on under the surface of an ordinary day. And once you begin to notice the labor, you can also begin to feel how restful it would be, every now and then, to set it down. There is often a fear hidden underneath, the fear the woman felt in her first hour at the inn. If I am not the strong one, who am I? If I stop performing, will anything be left? It can feel as though the self we keep building is the only thing holding us together, and that to loosen our grip on it would be to come apart entirely. But this is precisely what the woman discovered was not true. She set the role down, and she did not come apart. She was still there, more herself than before. What falls away when we loosen our grip is not us. It is only the effort, and the tiredness, and the fear. So what would it be to loosen that grip, even slightly? Not to throw the self away, but to stop clutching it quite so hard. To care a little less, now and then, how we appear and how we measure up. There is a release here that the old texts treated as the final and deepest of all, the letting go in which the whole long path comes to rest. They called it vosaga, which means relinquishment, the complete setting down. It is the moment we stop holding even ourselves so tightly and discover, like the woman at the inn, that we do not fall. We are held by something steadier than our own gripping. But the self does not settle down by being ordered to. If you have ever lain awake telling your churning mind to be still, you know how well that goes. The harder we push at the restless, self-concerned mind, the more it churns. There is a kinder way, and it has less to do with force than with simply ceasing to feed the fire. We feed it without realizing, going over the same worry again and again, defending ourselves in arguments no one else is even having, rehearsing and replaying until the water is thick with it. Stop adding to it, and it begins, on its own, to clear. The old texts have a word for this settling, this coming to rest. They call it nirodha, the ceasing. It is not so much a thing we do as a thing that happens by itself, the moment we stop doing everything else. And there is a very old image that shows precisely how it works. A student, in a state of great agitation, came one day to his teacher. His mind would not stop. Thoughts churned in him from morning to night, worries circling worries, and he had come hoping the teacher would hand him some method to force his mind into stillness. "Please," he said, "tell me how to make my mind still. I have tried, and the harder I try, the more it spins." The teacher said nothing at first. Instead, he took a clear glass jar and filled it with water drawn from a muddy stream, water so thick with silt and sand that it was brown and cloudy, and you could not see through it at all. He set the jar on the table between them. "This," said the teacher, "is your mind just now. So, make the water clear for me. Reach in and clear it. The student moved his hand toward the jar, then stopped. If I put my hand in and stir it, he said, I will only make it muddier. Yes, said the teacher, and that is precisely what you have been doing. Trying to force your mind into stillness is like reaching into the water to clear it. The reaching is the very thing keeping it cloudy. So tell me, what should we do instead? The student looked at the jar a long moment and slowly understood. Nothing, he said. We do nothing. We let it sit. We let it sit, the teacher agreed. At first, the student fidgeted. His hands wanted to do something, to help, to hurry the water along. But there was nothing to be done, and as the minutes passed, even that restlessness in him began to ease, as if it too were a kind of mud that could only settle once he stopped stirring it. And so the two of them sat together and did nothing at all to the jar. They simply let it be. And as they sat, something began to happen on its own, with no effort from either of them. The mud started to settle. Grain by grain, the silt drifted downward and gathered along the bottom of the jar. The water above it grew clearer and clearer still, until after a while it was perfectly transparent, and the afternoon light passed straight through it, and you could see clean to the other side. There, said the teacher, you did not make the water clear. You could not have, by force. The clearness was in the water all along, waiting. All it needed was for the stirring to stop. The mud did the rest by itself, simply by being left alone. Your mind is no different. You do not have to manufacture stillness. You have only to stop stirring and let what is churning come to rest on its own. Stillness is not something you make. It is what remains when you stop making everything else. The student gazed a long while at the clear water and at the settled bed of sand beneath it, and felt something in his own chest begin, very slowly, to settle too. This is the heart of it, and it is worth holding lightly. The stillness we long for is not somewhere far off, waiting to be reached by great effort. It is already here, underneath the churning, just as the clear water was already there beneath the mud. We do not have to build it. We have only to stop stirring long enough to let it show itself. The teacher Ajahn Chah loved to compare a settled heart to a still forest pool. When the water of the mind grows calm and clear, he said, all manner of rare and wonderful things come to its edge to drink, and we can see, reflected in it, the true nature of everything. But none of it appears while the water is churning. The stillness has to come first, and the stillness comes not by force, but by letting the mud of our endless self-concern drift down and settle. And this is the simple secret beneath the whole of the path. All the letting go we have spoken of, the releasing of the past, the cooling of craving, the loosening of the grip on the self, comes to rest here, in a stillness that asks nothing of us and was never really gone. We spend our lives stirring the water, certain that if we only stir hard enough, we will finally find peace at the bottom. And the teaching turns that exactly around. Stop stirring, and the peace was there the whole time. And we do not have to go anywhere special to find it. The settling can happen in a chair at the end of the day, on an unhurried walk, in any small gap when we stop, for a breath, trying to be anyone or fix anything. Mud settles in moments once it is left alone. The stillness is never more than one slow pause away. None of this asks us to become no one, or to give up our lives and our names and the people we love. It asks only that we notice, now and then, how hard we are working to be someone, and that we let ourselves, for a moment here and there, set the work down. In an ordinary day, this might be no more than a breath in which we stop performing, stop defending, stop checking how we are doing, and simply let ourselves be a person, alive, in a room, needing to prove nothing to anyone. It might come while washing a dish, or sitting in the car a moment before we go inside, or lying in bed at the end of the day, that small release of no longer having to be impressive or right or strong. Just for that breath, there is no one to be and nothing to uphold. The relief that comes is the relief the woman felt at the inn. We do not vanish. We come to rest. And underneath the figure we have been holding up so carefully, we find we were always being held. Be here a moment, with nothing to defend, and no one in particular to be. Let everything settle of its own accord, and rest in the stillness underneath it. We will continue in your own good time. So much of our lives is lived up in the mind, in the thinking and the planning and the worrying. And there is a real relief in turning, for a while, to something far simpler and closer to hand. Something that has been with us this whole time, patiently, asking nothing. The body. The Buddha treated the body as the very first place to come home to. Of all the ways he offered for steadying a restless heart, mindfulness of the body came first, and he praised it as being of great fruit and great benefit. There is a good reason it came first. The body is the most accessible thing there is. It is always here. It asks for no belief and no special understanding. While the mind goes wandering off into yesterday and tomorrow, into stories and worries and imagined conversations, the body remains exactly where it is, in the present, the one place where life is actually happening. And yet most of us live almost entirely somewhere else. We live up in our heads, in the thinking and the planning and the remembering, and we visit the body only when it hurts or when it wants something. We treat it as a kind of cart that carries our head around. We have, in a sense, moved out of our own home and left it standing empty, while we live in a small, crowded room upstairs called thought. To come home to the body is simply to move back in, to return to the warm, living, sensing ground of ourselves that was here all along. And the body holds no grudge for the long absence. It does not lock its doors against us. It waits, ready to take us back the moment we turn toward it, with the kettle still warm and the lamp still burning. There was once a scholar, famous across the whole region for the depth of his thinking. He had spent his life among books and ideas, and his mind was a marvel, forever turning over some difficult question, forever somewhere else. He ate his meals without noticing them, his thoughts 1,000 miles away. He walked through the world and saw almost none of it, because his attention was always turned inward, busy with the next problem. People admired him greatly. But if you had asked him what the soup he had eaten an hour ago had tasted like, or what the weather had been on his morning walk, he could not have told you. He had not really been there for any of it. One spring, his small granddaughter came to stay with him. She was perhaps 5 years old, and she lived, as small children do, entirely in the world of her senses, delighted by everything she met. At dinner, the first evening, she watched him eat, frowning a little, and at last she asked, "Grandfather, is the soup good?" He paused, his spoon halfway up, and realized that he had no idea. He had eaten half a bowl without tasting a single drop of it. "I believe so," he said. She laughed at him, the wide-open laugh of a child. "You don't know? But it's right there in your mouth. How can you not know?" He had no answer for her. So, to satisfy the child, he took the next spoonful slowly, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he truly tasted his food. And he was astonished. It was good. It was warm and rich, and faintly sweet with some herb he could not name, and it had been good all along, every evening, for years, and he had simply never noticed. The next morning the child took his hand and pulled him out into the garden. "Look," she kept saying, "look at this, a beetle on a leaf, a bead of dew, a flower just beginning to open." And he, who had walked past this garden 10,000 times composing his thoughts, looked. He felt the cool morning air on his face. He heard the birds, really heard them, as though for the first time in his life. He smelled the wet earth, and he was amazed to find that all of this whole living, breathing world of sensation, had been here the entire time, just on the other side of his thinking, waiting for him to come back to it. "You are always thinking, grandfather," the child said simply, picking a flower to carry indoors. "You are never here." Out of the mouth of a 5-year-old, it was the truest thing anyone had ever said to him. He had spent his whole life in the narrow room of his thoughts, and all the while the wide and richly furnished house of the world he could touch and taste and smell and feel, had stood open all around him, unentered. He had been, in a way, away from home for 40 years. In the days that followed, with the child as his unlikely guide, he began, slowly, to come back. He found that he could still think when thinking was needed, and then set the thinking down, and taste his tea, and feel the sun, and be where he actually was. He did not become any less wise. If anything, he grew wiser, for he had finally begun to notice the life he was living. We need not be famous scholars to know this absence. We have all driven a familiar road and arrived with no memory of the journey. We have all eaten a meal while staring at a screen and looked down to find the plate empty, the food gone, untasted. We have stood in a beautiful place, thinking about something else entirely, and missed it. We have held someone we love while our mind was already somewhere else, and let the moment slip past us half felt. None of this is a failing to scold ourselves for. It is simply what happens when we live up in the head. The present keeps arriving and passing, and we are not quite there to receive it. The body is how we receive it. It is the only part of us that ever actually shows up. So much of our lives passes this way, lived in the head, while the body, where the living actually happens, goes unattended. Watch a small child for a while, and you will see exactly what we have misplaced. A child lives entirely in the body and its senses. A child does not eat a berry while thinking about something else. A child eats a berry as though it were the only thing in the whole universe, the whole face involved, the juice everywhere, utterly present to the sweetness of it. We were all like that once. And then, somewhere in the long business of growing up, we gradually moved upstairs into our heads, into thinking and planning and worrying, and we left the senses behind as childish things. So coming home to the body is not learning something new. It is remembering something we knew perfectly well before we were 5 years old. The body cannot do this. The body cannot wander off into next week. It can only ever be here, now, feeling whatever it is feeling. the warmth of a cup held in the hands, the weight of the feet on the floor, the air moving over the skin. These are small things, and we tend to think them too ordinary to matter. But they are the texture of being alive, and they are happening only in the present, which is the only moment we ever actually have. This is why the Buddha pointed to the body first. It is the surest, simplest door back into the present, and it is a door we are always carrying with us. The body also has a kind of honesty that the thinking mind lacks. The mind spins tales of futures that may never arrive, of pasts endlessly rewritten, of slights and triumphs and disasters, most of which are not happening anywhere except in our heads. The body reports only what is actually here. It cannot fret about a conversation next Tuesday, because next Tuesday is not touching the skin. It knows only the warmth or the cool, the comfort or the ache of this exact moment. And there is something steadying in that honesty. When the mind has us half convinced the sky is falling, the body, if we turn and ask it, often reports something far simpler, that we are, in this actual moment, safe and breathing and held. But the body is more than a doorway into the richness of the senses. It is also a refuge. When the mind is in a storm, churning with worry, the body is the steady ground we can step down onto, the one part of us that is not caught up in the trouble. When we are overwhelmed, our first instinct is to think harder, to try to reason our way out of the storm. But you cannot calm a storm of thinking with more thinking. It is like trying to smooth troubled water by pressing on it with your hands. The body offers a different sort of help altogether. It does not argue with the worries, and it does not solve them. It simply offers us somewhere else to stand. Consider a young man so tormented by his worries that he could not sit still. His thoughts ran in circles from the moment he woke. He turned his problems over and over, and the more he turned them, the larger they grew, until his mind felt like a room crammed, too full of furniture, with no space left to move. He heard of an old woman who lived at the edge of the village and was said to be wise, and so he went to her, hoping she would untangle his troubles for him. He found her in her garden, kneeling in the dark soil. He poured out his worries in a great rush, all of them at once, hardly pausing for breath. The old woman listened and nodded, and when at last he had run out of words, she said nothing at all about his problems. "Come," she said, "kneel down here beside me. My beans want planting." He was bewildered. "But my troubles. I came about my troubles. I heard them," she said. "Kneel down. Put your hands in the earth." Not knowing what else to do, he knelt and pressed his hands into the cool, dark soil as she showed him, making little hollows for the seeds. At first his mind kept racing, the worries still spinning. But the old woman did not hurry him, and the work was slow, and the earth was cool and damp against his fingers. Now and then she murmured a small instruction, where to dig, how deep, how far apart to set them, and there was nothing for him to do but follow it, nothing to figure out, nothing to decide. Press the seed down, cover it over, shuffle along a little, press the next one in, and gradually, without his deciding it, something in him began to slow. He felt the sun warm on the back of his neck. He felt the solid ground beneath his knees, holding him up. He felt his own hands, truly felt them, working in the soil. and for these few minutes there was simply no room left in him for the spinning. He was too full of the actual world, the warmth and the soil and the weight of his own body to keep turning his worries over. When the last of the beans was planted, the old woman sat back and looked at him. "And how is the great storm of troubles now?" she asked. He was surprised to find that he had to stop and think to even remember them. They were still there, somewhere, but they had loosened and shrunk and drifted far off. "They have gone still," he said slowly. "They did not go anywhere," she said. "You did. You came down out of your spinning head and back into your hands and your knees and the warm earth. The worries cannot follow you here. The body is only ever in one place, doing one thing, here, now. It is the single room in your whole house where the worrying cannot come. Whenever the storm grows too loud, come back down into it. Feel your hands. Feel the ground. The body is always here, and it is always at rest underneath, and it has been waiting for you all along. This is the simple gift the body offers us, free of charge, 100 times a day. It is a place we can always return to, and it is always in the present, and the troubles of the mind, which live almost entirely in the past and the future, cannot reach us there. We cannot feel our hands in next week. We cannot feel the ground beneath us in a memory. To drop our attention down into the body, even for a moment, is to step out of the weather of our thinking and onto solid earth. And the beauty of it is that we do not need a garden, or a teacher, or any special arrangement. The body is with us in the supermarket queue and the waiting room and the difficult meeting. At any moment, in the middle of anything, we can let a little of our attention sink down out of the head and feel the feet on the floor, the breath in the chest, the simple weight of being a body in a place. And something steadies. We have come home, even if only for a breath, to the one part of us that was never lost in the storm. There is one more thing worth saying about this body we so often ignore. It has carried us faithfully through every single day of our lives. Through every hard hour and every happy one, it has gone on beating and breathing and holding us upright, asking very little, complaining only when it truly must. It is the oldest and most loyal companion any of us will ever have. And for the most part, we take it completely for granted, noticing it only when it aches or fails us. To come home to the body is also, in a small way, to thank it. To turn toward this faithful old friend, and instead of using it or ignoring it, simply keep it company for a while. None of this is a discipline to take up or a skill to perfect. It is more like remembering a friend we had forgotten we had. In the ordinary course of a day, you might simply notice, here and there, that you have drifted up into your thoughts and let yourself drop back down. Feel the warmth of the water while washing your hands. Feel your feet meeting the ground as you walk from one room to another. Taste the first sip of your tea as though you had never tasted tea before. Feel the surprising weight of your own arms resting in your lap. Let yourself feel the chair holding you up, and the floor holding the chair, and the patient earth holding all of it. These are not chores to add to the day. They are small homecomings, freely available, each one a return to the living body that is carrying you, faithfully, through this single, present moment, which is the only place any of us has ever truly been. Let the thinking settle now, and come back into the body for a moment. Feel its weight wherever it rests, held by what is beneath it. There is nowhere else you need to be. There is no rush. We will pick things up again shortly. We began this long, slow journey with a closed hand. A hand gripping, holding on, too full to receive anything new. And, step by step, we have been learning to open it. To loosen our hold on the past and the future, on our cravings and our worries, on the heavy work of being someone. All of that letting go has been leading somewhere, and we are close enough now to the end to see exactly where. What letting go makes is space. Each time we release something we were clutching, a little room opens up where the clutching used to be. And as the releasing goes on, that room grows until the heart that was once cramped and crowded becomes wide and open and spacious. This is the whole purpose behind all of it. Not to end up with nothing, but to end up with room. Room to breathe, room to rest, room to welcome whatever life brings. Think of how a crowded room feels, every surface covered, nowhere to set anything down, nowhere even to stand. And think of how that same room feels once it has been cleared out, how the light reaches into the corners, how you can move and breathe again. The heart is no different. We had simply filled it so full with wanting and worrying and defending that there was no room left in it for living. Letting go is the clearing. And what it leaves behind is not emptiness, but openness, which is a very different thing. The Buddha spoke often of a heart grown vast, a heart he called immeasurable, large enough to hold anything without being overwhelmed by it. This is not something we build by adding to ourselves. It is what is left when we stop filling ourselves up. The spacious heart is simply the cramped heart with its grip released. And into that open space, life can at last be welcomed. This welcoming space is not somewhere far off that we must travel to reach. We carry it with us, out into the middle of our ordinary days, walking through the world with a little more room in us than before. One day, a man came to the Buddha carrying a great heaviness in his heart. Something had happened to him, a hurt, a disappointment, the kind any of us might carry, and it had filled him up entirely. He could think of nothing else. "I cannot bear it," he told the Buddha. "This sorrow is everywhere in me. Tell me how to make it go away." The Buddha did not tell him how to make it go away. Instead, he asked a helper to bring a cup of water and a handful of salt. When they came, he stirred a spoonful of the salt into the cup and offered it to the man. "Drink," he said. The man took a sip and grimaced, pushing it away. "It is bitter, far too salty. I cannot drink it." The Buddha nodded. Then he led the man out of doors, down to the bank of a wide, slow-moving river. He took another spoonful of the very same salt and scattered it out into the river, into all that flowing water. "Now," he said, "drink from the river." The man knelt, cupped his hands, drew up the water, and drank. It was clear and sweet. "Tell me," said the Buddha, "where did the salt go?" "I cannot taste it at all," said the man. "The salt is still there," said the Buddha. "The very same amount. It has not gone anywhere. But the river is so vast that the salt cannot make it bitter. The cup was small, and so the same handful of salt spoiled the whole of it." He let the man stand with this a moment. The pain in a life is the salt. It is real, and we cannot always take it away. But how bitter it makes our days depends on the size of the vessel we carry it in. The sorrow stays the same. What can change, and what changes everything, is the vessel, the heart. You came to me asking how to pour the salt out of your life, the Buddha added. But the salt is not always ours to remove. What is ours is the size of the heart we meet it with. Widen the heart, and the very same sorrow that was unbearable in a cup becomes one small thing among many, in a life grown wide enough to hold it. The man looked out at the wide river for a long while, and he understood. His heart, in his suffering, had shrunk to the size of a cup, and the salt of his sorrow had made the whole of it undrinkable. The work was not to remove the salt. The work was to become the river. This is what we mean by a welcoming space, a heart with enough room in it that it no longer has to slam its doors against the difficult parts of life. Most of us live with a kind of doorkeeper at the heart, forever deciding what may come in and what must be kept out. The pleasant may enter. The painful is turned away at the threshold. We spend enormous energy on this sorting, this guarding, this refusing, and it makes the heart small and tense and tired, because so much of life will not be kept out no matter how hard we push against it, and the pushing itself wears us down. We do this with our feelings most of all. A wave of sadness arrives, and we brace against it, telling ourselves we should not feel this way, trying to think it away or push it down, and the bracing is exactly what keeps it stuck. A flash of frustration comes, and we either pour fuel on it or slam the door on it, and either way, it lingers and presses. So much of our suffering is not the feeling itself, but the fierce refusing of the feeling, the long, exhausting struggle to keep it standing outside the door. The spacious heart does something different. It stops guarding the door. It lets life in, all of it, the welcome and the unwelcome alike, trusting that there is room enough now to hold whatever comes. This does not mean we like everything that arrives, or that we stop caring. It means we stop fighting the simple fact of what is already here. A sorrow can be felt and held and allowed to move through us, rather than battled at the door and so left standing on the threshold forever. There is a deep peace in this. It is the peace of no longer being at war with our own life. It is worth being clear that welcoming is not the same as approving or giving up or lying down under whatever comes. We can welcome a difficulty into the heart and still act wisely and firmly to change it. In fact, we usually act far more wisely once we have stopped panicking at the door. Welcoming simply means we stop adding the second suffering, the suffering of resistance, on top of the first. We let what is already here be here, and from that steadier place, we respond. Once, a woman set out to walk a long pilgrimage, many weeks on foot, across hills and plains, to a holy place at the far end of the road. At first, she walked badly, though her legs were strong. Her mind was fixed entirely on the destination, the holy place at the end, and so every step of the actual road felt like an obstacle standing between her and where she wished to be. When it rained, she was miserable and cursed the rain. When the path climbed, she resented the hill. When the sun beat down, she longed for shade, and when she reached the shade, she was already dreading the next stretch of sun. The road was long, and she fought it the whole way, and she was wretched. One evening, footsore and low, she fell into step beside an old man who had walked many pilgrimages in his long life. "You walk as though the road were your enemy," he observed. "It is too long and too hard," she said. "I only want it to be over." "Ah," said the old man. "But the road is not in your way. The road is the way. There is no pilgrimage apart from these very steps you are taking. And you are fighting every one of them. But the rain," she said, "the hills, the heat, welcome them," he said simply. "The rain is part of the road. The hill is part of the road. Stop deciding that each thing ought not to be here and simply meet it and walk on. You would be amazed how the road softens when you stop fighting what it brings you." She walked a while in silence. "And if I cannot help fighting it?" she asked. "Then notice that you are fighting," he said, "and let that go too, as best you can, and take the next step. That is the whole of it. 100 times a day, if need be. The road forgives every stumble. It asks only that you keep walking." She thought he was talking nonsense, but she was too tired to argue, and the next morning, almost in spite of herself, she tried it. When the rain came, instead of cursing it, she let it come and felt it cool on her face and walked on. When the path rose, instead of resenting the climb, she simply climbed, one step and then the next. She stopped insisting that the road be other than it was and began, instead, to meet it as it came. And something opened in her. The road was still long. The rain still fell and the hills still rose. But she was no longer at war with any of it. She found that she could hold the whole of it, the hard stretches and the easy ones, the rain and the sun, without being undone by any of them. There was suddenly room in her for all of it. And to her astonishment, she realized that she was content, not at the end of the road, but in the middle of it, in the very thick of the walking. The peace she had been marching so grimly toward had been with her the whole time, in every step, available the moment she stopped fighting the step she was in. By the time she reached the holy place at the end of the road, she almost smiled to find that it no longer seemed to matter quite as much as she had imagined it would. She had been arriving, all along, with every single step. The pilgrimage had never really been the place at the end. It had been the walking, and the walking had become, somewhere in those long days, a kind of peace. Rest here one last time, in the open room that all of this has made. Feel the space around you and the space within you. There is nothing to hold, nothing to chase, nowhere else to be. And when you are ready, we will draw softly to a close. We have come a long way together, through everything the heart holds on to and everything it can release. If there is one thing to carry away from all of it, let it be this: letting go is not a loss. It is not about giving up the things you love or emptying your life of all that matters to you. It is about loosening the grip that turns even good things into burdens. It is about making room, the open hand, the cooling of craving, the stillness beneath the self, the body that is always home, the welcoming space. All of it points toward the same simple freedom. The freedom of a heart that holds life lightly, lets it come and lets it go. You do not have to remember any of it perfectly. The breath will go on teaching you. The body will go on waiting for you. The space will go on opening. Every time you set something down, you already have everything you need within you. So for now, let the day's holding loosen. Let your thoughts settle like silt in still water. Let yourself be carried, as you have always been carried, by something steadier than your own effort. There is nothing left to do tonight, and nowhere else to be. Rest now. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk.